Were we born into it or were we initiated into it? I pose this question because there's various theories out there on were we born with psychic abilities? Were we born as highly sensitive empaths and seers? Or was this something that we learned to develop through our childhood experience? I know in my experience, and many of those that are healers, light workers, energy workers, the whole array of beings that are here to serve the greater divine mission, have had a heavy dose of childhood trauma. I pose this question to you, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject as well. For me, I feel like it was both. So when I feel into the energy of this, I actually feel like it was both. We were highly sensitive, gifted, super aware, and had our gifts online. But as a child, we did not know how to use them. We didn't know we had them until we maybe went through our awakening or whatever you want to coin the term as, that opened up your eyes and brought the awareness that these were actually gifts. Reflecting back into my own experience, I experienced a pretty heavy childhood. Everything was very confusing. When you've had that kind of childhood, you learn to read the room very quickly. You learn to adapt to the individuals that you're around, your caretakers, because you're reading the energy to determine if it's safe. So, yes, there is a lot out there that says that we actually developed our abilities through these experiences because we had to learn and adapt and cultivate these sixth senses and these additional abilities on the basis of survival to make it through childhood. We had to learn to survive. I feel like it's been a fine balance between the both. We came in already pretty aware, super gifted, and higher vibrational, as well as we got deeply initiated into our human experience through trauma, through childhood trauma, through trauma as an adult, through repeating patterns. And I feel that some of us that have had a pretty heavier life experience, it was so we would wake up a lot faster and we wouldn't get complacent and comfortable in what we were experiencing. So the tail end is where we initiated. Where did we sign up for this? So we would learn to enhance and cultivate these gifts and abilities and these skills that were once used for survival because we didn't have the other pathways unless you had a spiritual mentor, grandparent, or somebody that was highly sensitive and in tune and was aware to help guide and support you. You had to learn the crash course way and finding your way back. So in my experience, I didn't know anything about being highly sensitive. I didn't know anything about gifts. I knew I was seeing passed on loved ones. I knew I was seeing those darker energies and they would like to inflict fear when I was a child. And also into teenage, things really started ramping up. And I had nobody to even talk to about what I was moving through. And another aspect of this that I do find pretty common is that those of us that have been highly sensitive or spiritually gifted have also had addiction templating, but I feel like that whole topic will have to be explored in another video. The addiction templating and why a lot of us had substance use or born into environments and homes where there was a lot of addiction, substance use, alcohol, etc. And feeling like that's also another part of the initiation. So, going back, I know when I first started my healing journey, I knew nothing about being an empath. These were all foreign terms. I knew I had dreams that were very interesting, that always stuck with me. I would remember different astral travels or different lifetimes that felt very real that I could not explain, but nobody was really talking about it. When I started my healing journey and started lifting off all the layers, going through the dissolving of the ego, a lot of my first work started substance use programs. That's where I started doing that deeper look and dive that sent me down a rabbit hole and deep immersion into self development, self discovery, and all of the things I could learn and get my hands on because I had refused to go back to a life that I had lived before. And so, what I first recognized was when I stopped using the different substances or trying to escape my reality, I was noticing that I would go and sit in the rooms and I would need to sit closest to the door because anytime I felt like if there was a huge group of people, I was feeling sick. I was feeling nauseous. I didn't know I was picking up on the energies of the room. I didn't know I was reading other people's thoughts. I didn't know I could hear them. I just thought I had really bad anxiety. I thought I had social anxiety. I remember telling I remember telling a support or a mentor during that time, I don't know if I could do this without getting prescription anxiety medications. I don't know if I can function this way. And she gave me some really helpful advice. And she's like, just make it through these first 6 months or to a year. If you can do that and work through what you need to, and you're still having the issues, then go talk to somebody about getting anxiety medication. That was probably the golden nugget I needed. It was very challenging, but also learned how helpful it is to actually know what we feel and to be able to navigate our reality. I know a huge one was I didn't want to feel my own emotions. That's what I had been running from my whole life because none of it felt good. It was even just the memories, and I couldn't stop the memories of stuff happening and in all of the various things. So I just didn't want to feel. Well, I was sitting in the rooms, like I said, and I would sit closest to the door because it was too overwhelming. And there was even times where I felt like I was going to throw up by being in the space with so many people. And I had someone come into my experience, and I was sharing the different things that were happening, and she actually believed me and the things I was seeing. That's how I got introduced to my first energy work, doing angelic reiki and getting certified in that. Was I was sharing with her, and she goes, "You're picking up on everybody's emotions. That's why you're feeling like you are." And she gave me a specific grounding stone so I could hold it during the meeting so I didn't have to get up and leave. As I was sitting there, I find it so interesting that someone would be sharing and they'd like get a word or they'd forget something that they were saying, and I would telepathically communicate with them and provide them the word they needed. And then all of a sudden they're like, and then they had the word they needed. And I thought, is that just coincidence, or is that just ironic that they stumbled and I knew exactly what they were saying and I thought it and sent it to them? And I remember just thinking, this is kind of weird. I didn't pay much attention to it. So as the more I went deeper on my journey, let's see, to bring it back, one of the biggest things I never knew how to do is to feel my own feelings. So if you consider yourself a highly sensitive, you're an empath, you are a light worker, you may notice that we have this distorted view that we are here to make the world a better place. And I know that was early in my journey. I was filling my cup up, getting my energy all good, getting it all right. And then I'd go out in the day and I would just pour it all out. I would give all my energy away. Just reflect over your own journey if you're going out there and you have a very leaky energy. And it also stems from childhood trauma. We learned how to read our experience, we learned how to read the individuals in our experience. And because we could feel them, we would do what we can to fix the situation or give up our energy or give up aspects of ourselves so we could make the other person okay. Why? So when I went into some deep shadow work early on in my journey, what I realized was that was still stemmed from childhood trauma. And I was trying to keep myself safe. And I was doing that by, we'll say, undercover manipulating the situation to make people feel better because it made me feel better because I couldn't handle being in their energy. And it was a profound moment when I was working with a mentor and I was doing some deep shadow work and really having to look at the depths of the things that had been hidden. And it was the most powerful, and it was the most potent, and it was also the freaking hardest. I'll say that she asked me a question and she said, instead of noticing how you make everybody else feel, notice how they make you feel. And I was doing various things in spiritual work and using herbal medicine, and I went into a dark night of the soul. And I recognized, even in my healing journey, which I had been a few years in at that point, my entire life had been never how I felt. It had been always about how everyone else felt. And that hit me so hard. I didn't know how to feel. I did spiritual work and worked through my stuff, but I was always afraid of my own emotions. And partially because my emotions were so deep. When I felt something, I felt it to the very core. And that would scare me because if I felt anger, it wasn't just anger, it was rage. If I felt sad, it was like the depths of despair. But also, I had the higher range when I felt happiness and joy. But you can only go as high and as low as you're willing to go. If you're kind of just cruising through life and then you're just absorbing everybody else's emotions and ignoring your own, how detrimental is that to our experience? I really feel like this was important to share because if that's the most pivotal thing you can take away from this is instead of how you make everybody else feel, how do they make you feel? And you'll start noticing, you'll start cutting ties real quick with people because when I had that awareness, I looked around and I realized I had been feeding all the relationships around me. I realized I was undercover manipulating the situation to make other people happy, to raise their vibration, to help them. So if they were in my experience, I would not feel uncomfortable or unsafe. I recognized that when I went into that, I didn't know how I felt. Said I had done the steps, I had done the work, I had done lots of that, and all of it terrified me. I had the story and the idea that if I felt anything, that it was going to kill me, that I was going to die. And that was something that was stored in the subconscious mind, hidden under layers and layers of trauma, of experience, of memories, of all of the things. So I wanted to bring this back home. The awareness. Spirit is asking me to share it, so I'm going to share it. God, give me the words, please. And there was another level that I know a big part of my path has been a level of self mastery. And with this level of self mastery, and the more we evolve, expand, we start recognizing some of the effects that we can have on individuals in the spiritual realm and the quantum realm just by if we have these big emotions that are attached to stories. And when you step into a higher expanded level of being, you start realizing that our emotions can have effect on other people, our thoughts and what we think. And if we have these stories that are running through our head, it can impact not just others, but also the whole creation field. And so that was something that Spirit is asking me to share right now. So being mindful of what you're putting out into the world, even energetically. I'm not saying to deny your emotions or ignore your emotions. They're intended to be felt, they're all part of this process, but also just being aware. A big piece of this was moving through the recent loss of a sweet soul that was a part of my soul family. And the only thing my human could do was, I just need to feel this. That's all I kept hearing. I just need to feel this. And the thing is, when we allow ourselves to go to the depths, there is beauty even found in those heavier emotions, the pain, the loss, the grief. There has been beautiful artwork made. There's been beautiful poetry made. There's been beautiful music made. There's so much beauty, even in the things that feel the heaviest. It unlocks and awakens something else. Now, I'm not saying we want to stay in that state, but I'm saying even in those moments, beautiful things can be born, beautiful new awarenesses can come from this. And some of the greatest artists, poets have utilized their creative power even in their pain. And so I was guided in my human experience. My human needed to grieve. And if it wasn't for my beautiful mentor hopping on a call and getting, I guess, what I needed as far as a verbal confirmation that it was okay to rest, that it was okay to feel, that it was okay to experience all of the motions without having to push myself. Because what I had ultimately did is I had pulled myself out of any timeline and was just suspended because I had one state of my being that was like, we have mission, we have purpose, we have things we have to complete. And my human aspect was like, I need to stop. I just need to feel this so I can allow it to move through my being, to move through my body, so I can release it and move on. And so the overall message, and I know I've talked about a lot of different pieces in this. And so I hope the biggest thing that if you are listening, you are able to see the value in your own emotions, that you don't have to go around pouring your energy into everyone else. And it is okay to feel how you feel. And there is beauty even in those harder moments. Were we born with it or were we initiated through it? And I would love to hear your thoughts on this and what your kind of takeaway is. If you are a highly sensitive and an empathic person or a healer, I would love to hear anything that stood out for you or resonated. I think it's all beautiful and a beautiful message to be shared that's been sitting in the back of my mind. So, are we complete, God? We are complete. So, with all of that, I'm sending you so much love.